All right, and welcome back to WBCR 88.3 The Saint. I'm Justin Kenny as always, and with me tonight we have a very special guest, somebody who, if you enjoy going to see movies, especially the same movie time after time, I suppose, you might be a big fan of this man and his invention, Stacy Spikes. So, Stacy, thank you for being with us.
Dustin, thank you so much for having me.
So, why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Oh boy. Let's see. So I am the co-founder of a little company called Moviepass. We set out to kind of bring a Netflix model to the movie-going experience. So you'd pay a flat monthly fee and you could go to the movies every day if you wanted. We had a really great run up building of the brand. And then people really loved it. And we got a private equity group that bought us. And then next thing you know, the company kind of took off. It was valued very high. And, as a founder, you have an exit, but one of the touchy details of the exit was we we had to prove out some things. And one of the tests they wanted to do was drop the price from $30 a month to $10 a month. And once we did that, the we signed up 100,000 new people in 48 hours. And we were like, okay, we got to turn this off. This is a great promotional price, but it's not sustainable. And that was when the new owners were like, this is great, keep it on. And long story short, they ended up forcing us out given the us not agreeing on that approach. And within 6 months or 8 months after that, they ended up going bankrupt. And then HBO said, hey, let's make a documentary about this. And in the middle of the doc, them shooting it, COVID was happening, and I was able to buy the company back and relaunch it. And now here we are. So
Yeah, and I remember kind of from watching the documentary that the main conflict within there, besides you and your partner versus the private equity, was that of price.
yeah.
And why do you think that the private equity thought that $10 was a very sustainable price to stay at instead of just kind of like a promotional deal? I know they talked about like selling data to try to make up for the lost expenses. Why do you think they were just in love with the $10? Was it just because of the high growth in that 148-hour period?
They literally said Netflix is $9. Let's make our price. I mean, or $10. Let's make our price, $10, which is I think it was $9.99 or $9.95. And so they just felt like that was a net magical price. And I said, well, if that's the case, you can make it, $5 and you'll get even more people to sign up. So they were just in love with the price point and the fact that it was moving. And I think they figured out they'd have more time to find a pathway to a cheaper business model. And it just never happened.
And then how did you come up with the $30 price point?
I mean, that $30 price point was very fixed into, so there's kind of a vector between how often people go and what that costs you, and then how much money you need to charge. And you want somewhere on that Venn diagram, there's kind of a magic box that both between you and the consumer, you want to be at. And we found that to be $25 to $30, not $10. That was on an all-you-can-eat model. Like, you literally can go every day. So you could go to $300 worth of movies. We found 10% of that possible exposure was where you needed to be. But anybody could go to as many movies as they wanted to. You go every day.
Yeah, and I know for obviously there's um other movie places that have this type of business, whereas Regal has the Regal Unlimited,
Yeah.
and they market themselves as I think it's $22 and just like, oh, it pays for itself in just two movies a month.
100%.
How do you kind of differ your advertising and messaging from the Regal Unlimited card?
So all the plans are relatively similar. I think the difference is Regal, I believe, is you can go every day. So theirs is similar to our old plan, which is unlimited. AMC, I think, is 12 movies a month. So you can go to 4 a week sorry, 3 every week, 3 movies every week, no matter what the format is. And then with ours is we shifted to a credit model, where now you buy an allotment of credits and you buy levels that you want to be at. And so 1 to 3 movies, 3 to 5 movies, or say 5 to 7 movies. And that way you're saving around 30% on going to the movies. But the difference with us is you can go to any theater in America that accepts MasterCard. So go to AMC, go to Regal, go to the little art house, go wherever you want, get on a plane, go there too, which with the others, you can only go to their theaters. And that's the big difference. We're kind of a universal plan, and they're a loyalty program just for their locations.
Yeah, and I from what you just said, two questions kind of just popped in my head.
Mhm.
One of which being, which is off of what you said, the last part of your statement there, which is you can go to the art house. Now, granted, we have one or two small theaters here in this area, but obviously with like Regal or AMC, you can kind of go just to corporate and make a deal with corporate, and they just say, "Hey, we're going to accept this."
Yeah.
How do you kind of get these smaller quote unquote art houses to agree to sign on to your business plan?
So no theater has to sign up. So the way it works is, and that's what's unique about ours, is we have what they call an OTT system, which is over the top. And that system, really what we do is we do a deal with you. So I'm going to overly simplify the business. 100 people pay a monthly fee and put all of that money into an account. Each time a person decides they want to go to the movies, we pull that money out and pay for it. You go in the app, you say, I want to go see Gladiator. I'm at the theater, or I'm going to buy it on time online. Boom, you press it, and it doesn't matter where you want to go. And so what we do is we work on buying wholesale. There's some places we don't buy wholesale, but you have the freedom of going wherever you want. And based on that pool of money, at the end of the day, we end up making money, and those who go to the movies end up making money. And that's how the system works. But you don't need some theaters were integrated in and some were not. So you can do it either way, partner theaters or non-partner. Go anywhere you want.
Okay. And then the other thing that came into my head was you're talking about buying like three movies or on a scale. But for somebody, what would be kind of your pitch to somebody? Like, take myself, for example.
Mhm.
I have friends who have like the Regal Unlimited, but they
Mhm.
live down the road from a Regal theater and they're the type where they have to watch every single movie. The
Yeah.
Oscars comes out, they have to watch every movie that's nominated.
All right.
Then you have somebody like me, they're an easy sell.
Right.
Then you have somebody like me who only really goes to the theater if there's like a big movie that they really want to go see.
Mhm.
Or, I mean, I also go to an art house movie showing once a month or something like that down the road for me. But what would be your pitch to somebody who's just like, I don't know, I don't go to the movies that often. What would be something that you would say to them about trying to get them onto your product or selling them your product?
We have two demographics that we really focus on. The first one is, um, you're in a major city, so you have a lot more choices of locations. The second is you go to the movies already at least once a month. If you don't go 12 times a year, you're probably not going to sign up for our service. You're not going to
Yeah.
sign up for any subscription service. But if you go to once a month and movie going is part of your lifestyle, then there's an automatic, any of the plans you sign up is going to save you money. And you're going to also collect loyalty points. And then it's, do I want the variety to be able to go to 3 or 4 different theater locations and be able to travel? Then you want a movie pass. You still can get your loyalty points at an AMC or at a Regal using your movie pass. Or do I want an AMC because I just go to AMC, and if it's not playing at AMC, I'll pay for it out of pocket, or Regal or wherever. And those are really the two type of mindsets. But I wouldn't try and chase someone who either doesn't live in a major city where there's a lot of choice or doesn't go at least once a month. No point.
Yeah. Another thing that kind of seemed interesting with the movie theater industry, that there's no real brand loyalty to one chain.
No.
It's kind of more just like whatever is closest to you. It's not like shoes, for example, where you're either a Nike person, an Adidas person, or even a New Balance person.
Yeah.
There's no brand loyalty. And do you have any thoughts on like why you think that is?
Yeah, think of it as a bunch of restaurants that have different names, but they all serve the same food at the same time. And so really proximity and when something's where it is, how far it is away from you and what time it's showing are the two decision factors, not necessarily I'm going to go out of my way to go to this other theater just because it's AMC. So if all things being equal, they're both showing Gladiator. What difference does it make? And so that's the is the Coke and the Pepsi that big of a difference? Is the Orville Redenbacher popcorn versus the AMC popcorn that big of a difference? Maybe to some people, but to most, it's just not enough of a big factor. So we find people will go in a 2 to 5 mile radius of where they are, and whatever showtime is convenient for their decision making, that's where they go.
Yeah, because like the only ones that I can kind of see that they try to do something different to attract them would just be AMC with the particular popcorn buckets for
Yeah,
certain movies.
yeah,
Some people are really into it, some aren't. I mean, like, I'm not going to go out my way to pay $40 for a big
right,
plastic thing I'm going to only eat out one time. It's just
right,
like
right.
that's some people do.
Yeah,
And
some people do. And I mean, so you can't build a market off of those people. So you kind of need to be where the center is. And for us, major US markets, top 20 EDI markets, and there is 8 to 10 movie theater choices in that person's proximity in a 10 mile radius. That's our demo.
yeah. And I kind of want to go away from the whole entire just business aspect of the area for a little bit,
Yeah.
even though I am an MBA, so I enjoy talking about this stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But obviously your business is all based around the movie going experience and the whole entire magic of movies and cinema and stuff.
Right.
But for you, what goes into a good movie going experience?
What goes into a good, somebody asked me this, and I'm going to try this answer on for size. Um, I think the venue is like a music venue. If you go see Taylor Swift, her music is designed for very large stadiums. If you go see jazz, it's designed for very intimate settings.
Yeah,
And so some movies like Dune or like Star Wars or like a Marvel movie, I want it on IMAX. Okay. I want that big experience. But if I go see Demi Moore in Substance or Conclave or any of these things that are Amelia Perez that's out right now, I don't want to see those in a really big auditorium like IMAX. I do want the art house feeling. I those movies are like jazz. They have a different feeling to them. And then there's those movies that are in the middle that I'm okay wherever I go see them. And so it's it's different. And I think it's a lot like music. And so the music the artist usually fits the venue. And you don't find everything on an IMAX,
Yeah.
but what's supposed to be on an IMAX is on an IMAX and you go see it there. So to me, it's all about the music fitting the venue.
Yeah. I mean, I agree because like I mean, I enjoy going to the big movies on the big screen. Like whenever a new Star Wars movie comes out, I want to go see it.
Oh yeah.
Um, but then like I think about something, I also am somebody who likes to go and experience kind of older movies that are being played in theaters again for the first time in years or whatever.
I like re-releases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I've been known to go out of my way to go see like what was it, My Bloody Valentine and Regal,
Yeah.
or go because down the road here, and we actually had the guy who runs this whole entire series on. Shout out Paul Kazee from it came from Schenectady.
Yeah.
Do a whole entire thing where they just do either old like rock and roll documentaries or old movies from like the 50s, 40s, 60s, and it's just like
Yep.
but when I'm seeing those movies, I want to be in a more cozy, kind of
That's right.
smaller environment. I don't want to be overblown by the Regal effect or whatever. I just want to feel like I'm at home in like a small theater just watching it and nothing too
100%.
overbearing doing it with it. But
Yep. Exactly.
oh, um oh, did I cut you off there? Were you gonna say something?
No, no, no. I said you're
Oh,
right. Exactly. That's
oh
exactly what I was saying. Yeah.
yeah. Um Another thing with the movie going experience I want to ask you about, and obviously you're not somebody who makes movies, but you're somebody who watches them and helps other people watch them. What's your
Yep.
thought on the whole entire 3D movie experience?
Um, again, I think so right now there's what I would call four, there's more, but I'm going to stick to four formats:
Yeah,
2D, 3D, um, the what they'll call 4D.
yeah,
4D is your seats might vibrate or mist may come out, think amusement park. And then there's what we call PLF, premium large format. So that's IMAX or your larger formats.
yeah.
There's a place for 3D. Me personally, I find the technology at times a little annoying. There's things that
I agree.
I don't need it to feel like that hatchet's coming at me. Very rarely are the effects I'm like, oh, but I think directors can achieve very similar depths of feel, um, even in a flat format. So I don't necessarily need it. And for the extra added price, I'm either going to do 2D or I'm gonna leap up to um, the PLX, the I'm PLF, the large premium large formats.
Yeah. I mean, personally, for me, I'm not really a big fan of the 3D or any of the special things that go along with it. Like, I remember going to see like almost every 3D movie I've seen. You put on the glasses, it's the only thing you can see to make it seem like a regular movie. But
Yeah,
then every movie I've ever been to that's 3D,
right.
only like really like one thing has ever come out of the screen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you get these little surprise ahas. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I remember when they released Star Wars Episode 1 in 3D,
Yeah,
when it looked like they were going to try to do all six at the time, re-released in 3D. And I remember watching it, and the only scene to actually have a thing pop out of the screen was in the pod race when Anakin had to reattach
yeah,
the thing to this thing, and that
yeah,
was the only thing that came out of the screen.
yeah.
I was like
Yeah, I
14.
don't, yeah, it's hey,
Yeah, I was like 13 years old. I was like, man, this is a ripoff.
right, right. But there's
Yeah,
some people who swear by it. They love the format. The format is still widely used and released. Once cinema went digital, You no longer need I mean, you can use the glasses, but it made it easier for them to adapt the footage for it. But
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah. Um, since we're on the topic of movie theaters,
Sure.
one thing, if you ever go to like a Regal, for instance, I don't know if AMC does this, but if you look at the employees' name tags,
Uh-huh.
they always have the "Hi, my
Move.
name is so
Yeah.
and so, and my favorite movie
Yeah.
is."
Yeah.
If we were to make a basically a name tag for you that said, "Hello, my name is Stacy, and
Ah,
my favorite movie is," what would you put as your favorite movie?
okay, I have an answer for this. I have a canned answer. There's a
Candy.
famous quote that an actress said, and I don't remember her name. She said, "Those who like movies have favorites, but those who love movies can't possibly." So that's my canned answer. That being said, I'd need a really long name tag. I would say there's The Matrix, the first one. I would say my favorite of all times is probably Blade Runner, the first one. Um, Lawrence of Arabia. Um, and then there's all these other ones that for different reasons, like there's scenes or there's things about them, the shooting styles. But those are like some of the big. I could then dive into Kurosawa and Seven Samurai. I can dive into
Fantastic movie.
you know, I can dive into Ridley Scott and why Ridley. It's like I would dive into directors and their different
Yeah,
styles. I would dive into Jane Campion with Hurt Locker. I would dive into James Cameron and how he can just make you care about these characters and they're very clear. You're good, you're bad, you're the hero, you're the villain, you're the this. Um, and you get it. Those characters are their arcs are so well defined. And I could just keep going. I can go into the
yeah,
classics and you go into the actors and here's Meryl Streep, here's uh, uh, Marlon Brando, and like a filmmaker like Ava DuVernay, like Ava takes very hard subject matters and is able to. When you look at her last film, you know, dealing with the subject of caste and race and how it's all connected globally and how the way Indians were treated in America is connected to how the Jews were treated in Germany, to connected to how the Indian caste system and how it's all connected and how we create these and yet she makes it into a story that's a palatable movie. It's like, how do you do that? What's his name? Clint Eastwood. Clint
yeah,
Eastwood. Clint Eastwood in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but then Clint Eastwood as a director. It's like, he's in his 90s. How do you do that? Right. So you can see why I could never have a film. And
yeah,
I could go on, we could talk for days and we would never, finish. So
yeah. I mean, your love of movies is definitely showing. I mean, for myself, I've had it with friends where we try to come up with like these top 10 lists for different things, like top 10 favorite wrestling matches, top 10 movies. And especially for something like movies, there's always seems to be just like, oh, here's my top 10, which like The Dark Knight,
yeah.
Moneyball,
Oh yeah.
Valkyrie, Revenge
Oh
of the
yeah.
Sith. But then you're just
Yeah.
like, here's the rest of them. But then you're just like, oh crap, but here's like four or
Yeah.
five other ones I have to
Yeah. Yeah.
include on the best of the rest.
Right. Right.
And you brought up also like Clint Eastwood as a director and also Clint Eastwood as a movie, I mean, as an actor. And he's arguably, besides maybe John Wayne, the best Western actor of all time.
Best. Yeah.
And then
And
obviously,
but if you didn't have Sergione and these Italian westerns,
Yeah.
It, like they made Clint, right? How they shot him at certain angles. It's almost a silent. The silence is so powerful where to see a character literally go, like that slow,
Yeah.
like to take the time to, and then he does something that if you've ever seen, Christopher Nolan has picked up on this, and I'm going to show you. This is very simple, but this is very complex. In all of Sergione's films, you hear this.
Yeah.
If you watch Tenant, you're going to hear dun, 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 dun. If you see Dark Knight, dun, 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 dun. If you see Inception, dun, 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 dun. And then if you see Dunkirk, Dunkirk is,
Yeah.
he's doing what Sergio Leone was doing with music and the clock, and how, if you remember in the I think it was the showdown for the good, the bad, and the ugly, and there's that point where they're all three standing there, and the little stopwatch going ding 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 ding
Yeah.
ding ding ding, and it's, but you see how now we're into sound design, right? And that's a whole nother world. Like if you didn't have um um why am I forgetting John's last name for
Ford.
the, no, for from all of Lucas's all of uh
Oh, Williams.
thank you, John Williams.
I thought you were
It,
talking about John Ford, the director.
yeah, no, if you take away John Williams, if you take away Hans Zimmer, if you take away, like they make, there's a thing with sound and music. If you take away Nine Inch Nails from the Tron movie, like it's, so it's a whole thing. I keep threatening to write a book called How to Watch Movies because
Sounds like a great idea. You should do it.
I have this thing in my head that you don't just watch a movie. It's like learning how to eat. What you start with, what you end with, what you clear your palate with, how you eat a meal is, and what goes together has to do, because a movie, there's what happens before you go, there's what happens when you're there, and then you're transformed and you become something else. You become a different human being if the
Yeah.
right movie, you will never, you will go into a dark room, you will ride the light across space and time, and you will emerge a different human being that you can no longer see the world the same way. Once you see a Christopher Nolan film, because Chris is obsessed with time, okay? Everything's about time. Inception is bending time. Interstellar, The Mechanic, where he does everything in a loop. He goes backwards, but the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning. If you go see Tenant, it's like he's obsessed with time, and he uses time as an element.
Yeah.
Uh, the moment the bomb goes off and the way he focuses on explosions in uh what's the Oppenheimer,
Yeah.
those are examples of how he's obsessed with time. And so that's the stuff that I mean is so important. But yeah, anyway, you could see I can talk for days on this.
Yeah. And I mean, like, even, I mean, two things come to mind with that, which is like, first, George Lucas talks about how like Star Wars is a silent film with sounds, pretty much,
That's right.
where like Star Wars is just overcome with the music. But it's
That's right.
almost ironic how you can kind of just sometimes recognize a movie by just one sound. And one that kind of comes to my mind is Monty Python and the Holy Grail with the two
Yeah.
coconuts,
Yeah.
where ironically that wasn't originally the plan, from what I've heard, that they
Right.
were supposed to just have real horses, but somehow they weren't
Yeah.
able to make work with the budget. So it's like, oh, why don't we just take two coconuts and cook, 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 and
Right.
everybody knows that movie from either the coconuts or like, oh, it's just a mere flesh wound.
You're right. 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 Yeah.
But another movie that you brought up, and it's known for being just incredibly long, is
Mhm.
Lawrence of Arabia.
Mhm.
And I'm still trying to get myself to get through and just watch the entire Lawrence of Arabia. It's just for me, it's just so super slow, or it's just so hard to stay interested in it for sometimes for some people.
Mhm.
Um, what's your thoughts on how to properly watch one of these like incredibly long movies like Lawrence of Arabia, Gandhi,
Yeah.
The Irishman, stuff like that?
Um, First off, you can't watch them at home.
Okay.
You can't watch them at home until you've seen them in cinema first. Cinema does something where if you properly put your phone away, you then can see and appreciate. And when you, David Lean is the director of Lawrence of Arabia. When you think of David Lean, you need to think of a painter. And he has a canvas. There's a scene with Omar Sharif where he's a little speck on the horizon. And there's a guy at a well, and Lawrence needs water, and Lawrence's assistant is with him. And the horse is this little speck in it, and he doesn't move the camera, he just sits there, and we wait in real time for this horse, this man on a horse, to get here. And then he shoots the assistant and says, he's from this clan, and I'll give you water from my well, but he can't drink from my well, and but the fact that he takes up that much time, it is, there's a saying that movies are life with the boring parts taken out.
Hmm.
And if you get to sit in a museum and you truly take a bench and you sit there for 20 minutes, sit there for a half hour. If you sit there unobstructed, you will see something that you didn't if you just walk by. When you're watching a movie at home, you're walking by. When you watch a movie in its true intended environment, it makes you slow down, and it is a meditation. The nuances, because remember, there's all these things you need to read: body language, what's going on behind them. And there's these, when you see a great film, I'll tell you, there's another David Lean film. If you ever get to see it, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Dr. Zhivago, there's a
Okay.
scene where he's got the camera set up in a room, and there's a doorway, and the doorway has the corner of the bed, and underneath the sheets is a woman's legs, and just ever so slightly at one point her legs move, and you see nothing else but the sheets kind of shift because she's moved her legs. That's it. And when you go back, when you've appreciated, if you had a remote control or you had your phone, two things would happen: you'd miss that shot, or you'd fast forward through it. But when you see it on the big screen now, you can go watch it on your phone, and you're going to be waiting for her legs to move. Why did they take, remember, it cost money for film to run. But why'd they do that? Because that was important to that director. Why? He wants you to slow down. If you live in the desert, he needs you to slow down to real time. And in real time, you can appreciate things that you normally wouldn't see.
Yeah. Another type of movie going experience that not all people are really going to go to, unless if they're really just somebody who just wants to experience something new or likes going to see old movies, is that of silent movies, whether it be the Chaplin movies or um, why am I blanking on his name? The director of like Nosferatu and those ones. I'm
Oh yeah,
blanking.
yeah, yeah. I know who. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
blanking on his name. I'm literally gonna hang up with you after this interview, and it's
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
come straight into my head and
yeah,
be like, "Damn it!"
yeah.
But and like those types of movies,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on kind of the going experience for those? Because I mean, like I'm the type where I say everybody should go to see at least one silent movie in theaters in their lifetime.
Oh, what? Once every quarter. It's like,
Yeah,
um, again, you get to see this really important that music was more important than words and more important than it played such a big character, and you get to understand the orchestra and the scoring of the how music suddenly. So before there's songs, right?
yeah,
There's so you have songs, whether you watched an opera or you watch. So let's go back in time. There's a song that has a beat and a rhythm and a lyric and a rhyme and a bump on a bump, and it does that.
yeah,
Then you have opera where you have moments of breaking out in song, but what you have with opera is you have these. If you ever saw Les Mis, or you saw Madame Butterfly, or you saw um, um, Faust, and I'm going to use Faust for a second. There's this moment where
fantastic movie.
he's going Faust, Faust, and the violins and the cellos are, and they're giving you this feeling of rush of heartbeat and your blood pumping. And so what you get with silent pictures is you get the orchestral maneuvers from the opera, but now the stage is now moving pictures. So you
Yeah,
bring those two worlds together, but they're silent, they're talkies, but the musicians are coming from the orchestra pits from cinema. And sure, there was some times where there was a piano because they were matching what the characters were doing in the scenes, but for the most part, that's where you're getting that from. And so it's the beginning of a relationship with sound that's so critical, that is a key component. And so what you're
yeah,
talking about when you're telling a friend to go see these pictures, you're telling a friend to go and experience um, the early birth of a relationship where sight and sound come together. And then it has a child, which is the talkies, where the voice is now a part of the character, but you didn't need that in the beginning. It was born without that.
yeah. And I mean, there are even now groups that go around, like one's called like Order of the Elusive, where they go around to different art house theaters
And play.
and they take music and they take these silent movies
Yeah.
and they do new music every single time. Like they don't do the predetermined music. They create a
Right.
new one. They kind of just wing it every single time.
Yeah.
So pretty much it's kind of like going to see a Skrillex DJ thing. It's like everyone's a different one.
That's
Um,
right.
but we're coming up towards the end here.
Yeah.
And but one thing I wanted to talk to you about, especially with Siena being a Catholic school with friars, Franciscan priests that live on campus, is towards the end of the documentary, you talked about after you kind of lost the company for a little bit there, you went to go, I believe it was you, you went to
Yeah.
a monastery
Yeah.
and you talked about your time there.
Mhm.
what did that time teach you? And also, what, after losing almost everything, or at least the company in that regard, made you seek out something like a monastery?
So I had been to the monastery I go to is of the Trappist, which is of the I believe it's Benedictine.
Okay.
Um, so I had read a book called Seven Story Mountain, which was oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on him. It'll come to me in a second. And he was he was a college student in the 20s, and Thomas Merton. And so Thomas Merton went off and his brother got killed in World War II. And he lost and found himself, but he went into the Trappists, which are, I think they're either Franciscan order or Benedictine. And he went to this monastery. And so I happened to go. So I was already doing this once a year in the month of October. I go, and it's a Christian-based monastery. And so I sit in the monks, and it's a silent monastery. And I think that was part of being an entertainment executive, and you need to learn how to get off the train sometimes of madness in a very big ego driven world that we work in. And so I would go up there for once a week, 1 week out of the year, and sit with monks in silence. Well, when this happened, I was like, I know where I need to go, and I know what I need to do. And I needed to sit in prayer and in silence. And in the silence, all your answers are there. You're not lost. Things happen, but you got to get quiet and the monks have this saying, be in the world, but not of the world. I am of another world. I am a being down here going through a human experience, but I am a soul from another place. And my soul has a set of spiritual ideas or principles. And I'm walking through human situations, yet I must be reminded of the origin of that soul. And I need to go, for me, to church or to the monastery to reset that compass. And so the monks are, for me, a resetting of my GPS system or my satellites to remind me what my role is here. And my role is I connect people through story. I am a purveyor of an art form that allows people to find their relationship with the universe. I don't make movies. I don't run a movie theater, but a I am a person whose job has always been to help showcase why this perishable fruit that is only going to be on this tree for a very short amount of time is worth seeing and experiencing. That's what I do. I'm a marketing person. So the monastery for me is that reset, and it's vital. And if you don't have it, you can't stay intact. You need something. For me, I need something like that, and that's what I do every year.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of go into, I mean, this is kind of a great way to kind of end this. You kind of go a little bit into the whole entire, um, if you've ever read Man's Search for Meaning
Oh
by
yeah,
Frankl,
yeah, yeah.
and really goes into this with him, where unlike Nietzsche and Freud, where their meanings of life are either sex or also cocaine for Freud, I guess, and power for Nietzsche. Frankel's mostly about just finding meaning in what you do.
That's
And
right.
I think for you, it's you were able to find that with the monastery. But with this being kind of the end of the interview, we got a few minutes. One question I always like to ask somebody is obviously we've talked about a lot of movies, talked about a lot of business practices, stuff like that. But obviously we can't talk about everything. Is there something that you really want to say that you haven't gotten the chance to say in an interview yet, but you really want to say it? And if so, now is your time.
Um, we didn't get to touch on it, but I think the probably the big thing I would cover is I was fortunate enough to write a book. And so that book is called Black Founder, The Hidden Power of Being an Outsider. And one of the things that it talks about is, and it's not a book for Black people per se, it's a book for anybody who may find themselves with the appearance that they don't have resources to be successful. The outward appearance, and to let you know you have a lot of opportunities and tools to be successful, but you have to look at it from a different perspective. And I got to really dive into those spiritual practices that we just brushed up against. And it really was this handbook for a founder or an entrepreneur or any person who has a soul that is a builder or a maker, and you like to build things, to help them navigate those waters, both inside and outside. So if anybody ever wants to know or hear that journey from within, I would say definitely pull that out. Go check out the book. And it's something I'm really honored to be able to have done and proud of. And so that would probably be my only thing that I would add.
Well, that's a great way to end this. Obviously now we're out of time, so it's been a great interview. It's been great fun. So this has been Justin Kenny with WBCR 88.3 Saints with Stacy Spikes of Moviepass. So Stacy, thank you for being with us.
Justin, thank you. This was great.
Yeah. And for all you out there in Radio Land, have a good one.